We got another one just like the others. It's pretty gruesome.
Brief me.
Young woman, her face cut off. No apparent motive, no witnesses, no leads. No evidence.
Okay. I get the point. So, how many we got now?
This makes 13. All the same. I think it's pretty safe to assume that these were all done by the same killer.
You think? We need answers, like, now.
Wait until the press gets a hold of this.
Oh, that's the last thing we need now.
Hello, and welcome to Comic Book Movie Oblivion, the podcast about feature films based on comic strips and comic books that people have stopped talking about. This week, we're talking about Verotika from 2019. It's your Halloween episode. Ooh, spooky!
Oh, this is spooky, all right.
I'm your host, Kumar. My co-host is Jordan. How are you, Jordan?
Well, look, I was doing a lot better this time last week when I had never heard of Verotika.
Okay, so Verotika is... I actually wrote more notes for this episode than any other... I've written, I think, 6 pages of notes.
Oh, man.
Or more, if I can find
Art
them.
from adversity, Kumar.
There's just so much to talk about.
So much.
Yeah, so... Okay, so we'll start with the comics as we always do. So,
Well, should we start with who is Glenn Danzig, Kumar?
Okay,
so your area.
Yeah, this is my area. That's what I was about to start with, even before we get to the comics. So,
Right.
Glenn Danzig was he was a singer. He is a singer. He was in a legendary punk band called the Misfits, who were kind of a horror-themed punk band. And then he went solo, and he released, I think, about 7 albums or more. A couple of classic albums as well, and I think in the last 3 years he put out an album of Elvis covers. And he's kind of his solo work is more like metal. It's more, I wouldn't even say metal. It's just more like really like a heavy blues. Even that's not right. But anyway, those first 2 albums were awesome, and I listened to them, and I still listen, especially to the second album, Lucifuge, all the time. And
Is this his solo work or with the Misfits?
the solo work, and his Misfit stuff was really good too. And even calling it punk is not quite, a fair description of it.
But these albums, these first 2 albums, you really like.
Oh my God, yeah, especially the second one. And he was my friends when I was a skater, when I was a teenager. My friends were all really into the Misfits, and I kind of more latched on to the solo stuff because I was more into the metal, and they were into the punk stuff. So
that's the last time we will be praising Glenn Danzig this evening.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's pretty true. So I stopped. I think the last album I listened to was maybe the third one, and then he kind of fell off the map because even the third one I didn't really like as much. And but the thing another thing that really helped latch on to him was he really he had really cool comic artists sometimes doing the covers of his albums, and he had like a H.R. Giger cover on the third album,
right? And
so I connected with all that stuff. And in 1994, he started a comics company called Verotika Comics. And as soon as I heard this announced, of course, I was really excited because, of course, I was hugely into comics. And it was Danzig. I thought, wow, this is going to be great. And he hired all the best artists. He had really good taste in comic artists. He had Bisley. He had Frazetta covers.
Frazetta again.
Yeah. And he had Martin Emond. He had Richard Corbin do 1 or 2 covers, as I recall. And they were also, some of these people, Bisley had done one of his album covers as well and stuff. So, and there was this full page ad in the Diamond previews that was for Satanica, which was, it was just everything about it seemed really cool at the time. But as soon as the comics came out, it was oh no, these are awful. Now,
yeah,
they got worse. They started out kind of bad, but at least the art was good, and you could see that he was trying to kind of, I don't know. He's trying to make something that had kind of narratives that made sense. And they were some of these series ran like 15 issues, so there was like kind of ongoing storylines. And we did an episode of covering some of his comics on Deconstructing Comics.
Okay.
And he also famously he brought in Go Nagai's Devilman from Japan, and notoriously drew nostrils on the characters. But I think my understanding is Go Nagai was like a Misfits fan, so he had agreed to this deal that Glenn Danzig had offered him.
Devilman would have nostrils.
Well, I don't know if he knew that when he said yes, but I think he might have been. I don't remember what the full story was, but people are like, he's drawn nostrils onto these characters. Anyway,
Glenn Danzig personally drew the nostrils.
I don't know. He personally seemed to have colored some of the comics we're going to talk about today, which is a bit weird. He published a bunch of Nancy Collins stuff. He did an adaptation of Her Sunglasses After Dark, which I haven't read, but that stuff came out from Verotika Comics. So I read them, and I was like, okay, these are pretty bad. And many times they're still in my collection. And I think about getting rid of them, and then something about them makes me want to hold on to them. And I want them to be good because I like the Danzig and I like those three films. I want the comics to be good. They're never good.
Well, I've held some of the Verotika comics that you own, Kumar, because you lent them to me in order for me to prepare for these podcasts, and I can confirm that they are not good.
Well, I bought those new, and those ones are from like 2018, and they're really bad. Like they've gone so downhill in ways that we'll have to talk about.
All right. Well, shall we talk about the two which we read to prepare for the film?
So the thing, so the movie is called Verotika. It's from 2019, and it's basically a horror anthology. And I was thinking about this today, and I can't think of any other genre that actually does movie anthologies. I can't think of a science fiction anthology or like a musical anthology. It's always, I'm thinking of the Tales from the Crypt adaptations and Trilogy of Terror.
Trilogy of Terror.
And Black Sabbath, Mario Bava's Black Sabbath, which seems to be maybe the primary influence on Verotika.
I haven't seen that one, but I have seen Trilogy of Terror. I'd planned on bringing it up, and I've seen Creepshow and Creepshow 2.
Right.
And I really love all those movies.
Yeah.
They are great. I love a good horror anthology film. You're right. It does seem to be a singular genre, doesn't it?
Yeah. It seems very specific to horror. So we've got it's adapted from three things by Danzig. One is a comic from the late 90s, I'm going to say 97, called The Albino Spider of Dajette, which was 2 issues, plus a 0 issue. I'm not sure what was in the 0 issue. I looked online, and it seemed to be like a bunch of pinups and a 10-page story, but I don't know what that story is because it's not covered in the movie.
Doesn't make it its way into the film.
It's not in the movie, which is odd, for reasons we'll get to. There's a story called Change of Face, which was published in 2018 in a anthology called Morella Presents Verotika or something like that.
Morella is his crypt keeper equivalent.
That's right.
Just a sexy lady in a devil costume.
Yeah. Like who am I thinking of?
Elvira, perhaps?
Elvira, Elvira, and all the others like that.
Except way tackier than Elvira.
Oh yeah. And there's another one called Drukiha, Contessa Drukiha, which is like it was actually a prose story with illustrations, and we haven't read it because I couldn't find a copy of it.
I can't imagine what it's about because absolutely nothing happens.
It baffles me. There is no beginning, middle, or end in this thing. So yeah, what was this prose thing about? How many pages was it? I'm baffled by it. I really have to know. Anyway, it's basically he's like a Glenn Danzig's work. So Glenn Danzig, the thing you need to understand is he takes himself very seriously.
Ah, yes. That he does.
He's like a real life Garth Marenghi.
That is exactly the comparison I was going to make, and you beat me to it.
Yeah. He's
like if you cross Tommy Wiseau with Garth Marenghi.
No, he's worse than Tommy Wiseau. It's like...
Oh, he kind of looks a little bit like Tommy Wiseau.
He does look a bit like Tommy Wiseau, but it's more like Neil Breen, I think. Because Tommy Wiseau made one movie and stopped, or he kind of has coasted on the fame of it. And he's not really... He's a bit cagey about the irony of the movie. You know what I mean? Like, people like it for the irony of it being so bad. Mm-hmm. Whereas Neil Breen is still making movies and seems to be oblivious to
the fact
how
that they're terrible.
shoddy they are.
And Glenn Danzig this is part of what makes these films so hilarious, is that he's completely lacking in self-awareness.
Yeah. And he's made another one.
I read that.
He's made some sort of vampire western or something that's come out as well.
Okay. All right, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's return to the comics. Okay, so first up, I read Albino Spider of Dajette.
Okay.
And this is a story by Glenn Danzig, colors by Glenn Danzig,
some of the colors.
Glenn Danzig.
Yes.
It's a good sign when, like 3 out of the 5 names on the title page of your comic are all the same guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Drawn by Eric Canetti, who I think worked on Aeon Flux, or at least draws exactly like he worked on Aeon Flux.
It does look a bit like Aeon Flux, doesn't it? Except shit.
It's really shit, and it gets worse in the second issue for some reason. I don't know why. It's the same team.
The art is awful. It's like the worst of Rob Liefeld.
No, it's worse than that. It's kind of
Yeah, it is worse.
I don't know. Yeah.
It's like everything bad about 90s comics dialed up to 90.
Yeah.
Yeah. The art sucks.
Okay, so we could keep talking about how much it sucks, and people won't understand how much it sucks. Okay. All you have to do is describe the plot of Albino Spider.
Okay, the plot makes the plot makes absolutely no sense.
Okay, well, so there's this woman. She's French. It's set in France. She's about to have sex with this dude, and he tries to take her top off. She's like, no, do not take my top off. He takes her top off anyway. Instead of nipples on her breast, she has actual eyeballs.
Yep.
That blink and are looking at this guy. This guy's response
Your breasts are looking at me.
Shit, your tits are looking at me, is his response. Which is a crazy response. It's not like, oh my God, like there are eyeballs on your breasts. Anyway, so he runs out. She starts crying. Her roommate, Dajette's roommate, comes in, and her roommate's like, he's an insensitive pig. And I'm like, wait a second. Does the roommate know that she has eyeballs on her instead of nipples? Because I don't think it's necessarily... I realize we're in a very liberated, open-minded society these days, but if a woman has eyeballs on her breasts, that's not normal by any stretch of the imagination. And I don't think the guy was just being insensitive. Or does the roommate not know that she has eyeballs on her breasts?
Yeah.
And that men keep running out for some reason.
Questions, and...
Okay, but
there are many, many more such questions.
Okay, so what happens is that as the guy runs out, Dajette cries, but actually the tears come out of the eyes on her breasts, and they fall onto this albino spider that's in the room on a plant with her.
Oh, it's on a no, it's not on a plant, Kumar. It's on a rose.
Oh, it's on a rose, and it grows into this 6-armed, 8-limbed monster, which is like her killing fiend, which is her subconscious.
Well, it might be her subconscious, or I don't know why her subconscious wants to do the things that this monster does. I mean, it's not exactly Prospero's.
Why? And then the other thing is, the thing is in the room with her walking around, and it says that she needs to go to sleep so he can kill. Apparently, he can be alive in the room, but in order to kill, she needs to be asleep. I'm not sure.
I'd also like to talk about how stupid this thing looks.
But wait a second. Before we get to the thing I want to get to is
okay.
So basically, the rest of the story is this monster goes on a killing spree, which means kills 2 people, and it's like this. There's a serial killer, which they call the Neck Breaker. It's like the Big Mac joke from Pulp Fiction.
It's exactly
just
like
called the Neck Breaker.
Yep.
But it's not a joke. It's just that Danzig's like, if you put "le" in there, that's maybe enough.
Danzig's got like That's it.
But
he has the most peripheral, surface level knowledge of French. He calls the red light district Rue de la Prostitute.
Oh yeah, I love that. And then there's a translation: Rue de la Prostitute, street of what is it? And then it's a street of hookers.
And that's not what that means.
There was we did a comic once on the other show called Dr. McNinja, and there's a really funny scene where Dr. McNinja says the word "see," and then you get a little caption box explaining that it means yes. And it was like that. It was really, but my whole thing here is, okay, why does she have eyeballs on her breasts? That's never explained. It's never mentioned. It's not.
There's supposedly a connection between the eyeball breasts and the fact that a spider is. It's like Peter.
Sure, but where did the eyeball breasts come from in the first place?
Yes, none of it makes sense.
That's why I was wondering, was this maybe explained in the Zero issue?
I doubt it.
But yeah, I doubt it too, because it didn't make it. You'd think it would make it in the movie if there was like, oh, we need to explain why this human being has eyeballs on her breast, and the tears of the eyeball can turn things into giant mutant spiders.
But it doesn't though, because it also only exists when she's asleep, but can talk to her and is in the room with her sometimes.
Yeah.
And can, interact with her physically, but can only interact with other people physically when she's asleep, and is acting out on subconscious desires or the things that she can't do. And apparently she's a model, I think.
She is a model.
An erotic model, and the erotic model has fantasies of raping prostitutes and breaking their necks.
And her best friend, who is compassionate towards her. For some reason, her subconscious rapes and kills her friend.
No, it makes no sense.
And then her friend is dead, and she's webbed up to the ceiling. There's no mention of the broken neck, but I think I
think he snaps her in the torso.
Right. Okay. And okay, and then another person the subconscious kills a prostitute, and
this is the albino spider. It's never confirmed that it's her subconscious.
Right. Okay. Right.
It could be anything.
She goes to see a porno movie in a public cinema, so maybe this is the 70s. She falls asleep while she's watching it, so the thing starts to attack another person, and she wakes up when these dudes in the cinema try to assault her. And then she goes home, she decides she's going to kill herself to end this. And she takes some sleeping pills and calls the cops. And
she wanders around. I need coffee, and it's not me.
Yes.
No one's accusing you. No one ever accuses her of anything.
Yes.
She's wandering around going, "It's not me. I'm not doing it."
But she knows because she spoke to the thing, so she kind of knows it's her. And the cops show up. She dies. The thing is still alive.
Yeah, even when she dies, the thing is still there.
Apparently weak enough that bullets will kill it, I guess, because the cops bust in, they kill it, and then they say he is pale as the ghost. So your reaction is not that it has 6 arms.
Yeah, that it's 8 feet tall and has 6 arms.
It's that it's pale as a ghost. This is about 30 pages of comics total, I'd say. Over 2 issues,
and it's in France. Like, can we? And just like I said, the strip can't decide what language they're speaking because it sprinkles in schoolboy French.
Yes.
Mon chéri. Oui.
Yeah.
But yeah, the rest of it's so are they speaking English and just occasionally speaking French?
Yeah.
Why do they have Z instead of the? The whole thing's inconsistent.
Yeah. It's chaos.
And childish. The spider has like a handlebar mustache, like a French mustache with this is presumably supposed to be menacing, and it's got a stupid little like Salvador Dali kind of style mustache.
Yeah. Okay, that's Albino Spider of Dajette. I to me, it's amazing that he never explained why she had the eyeballs on her breast or why the tears caused this thing to form.
It's cool, Kumar. It's just so cool.
I actually think you're onto something. I think he writes comics as if he's writing a song, and it just has to be a single image or concept, and there doesn't have to be a structure or a narrative around it.
That's it. And I think you're even giving him too much credit, even with that.
Because if you listen to the song,
the
best Danzig song is "Her Black Wings," which I can see him writing a comic about, and it would just be about this demon lady flying around.
Yeah. Okay. So I think this is a working theory.
Yeah.
Okay, Albino Spider of Dajette might have been some lyrics he had lying around about the eyeball boob lady that weeps on the spider, and it fears come to life, and then she dies from a drug overdose. Man, so cool.
Yeah.
But it's not.
I think that's pretty accurate. All right, let's go to
Change of Face.
Change of Face. Now, before we get to Change of Face, one thing I want to say is in the last issue of Morella Presents Verotika, we get an announcement about the movie. Now, one of the things I've been avoiding on this show is something that's been happening in the last 15 years is a director or a writer will want to make a movie and nobody will want to buy it. They try to pitch it to various studios. Nobody's into it. So they hire somebody to make a comic book of it. And then the comic book comes out, and then it's an easier sell to the studios, and then the studio make a movie.
Comic, okay.
Because there's a pre-existing comic, and it also kind of looks like storyboards, so the dumb studio executives can kind of understand.
Oh boy, we're going to get into how comic panels are not storyboards.
Well, I was kind of wondering in this because when I saw the announcement, I started to feel cynically like, oh, was this already shot, and then the artist drew the film that had been already made?
Okay.
Maybe. Based on certain things.
All right. Well, we have to talk about this when we get to the film.
Yeah. We can talk about it now.
All right. Okay. Well, all right. Because talking about the film is much like talking about the comic. I'm going to say that I'm going to say no, because I think what's happened is that Danzig has used his comics as storyboards for when shooting his film.
Yes.
Because there are all kinds of perspective problems in the movie. I watched the Red Letter Media review of Verotika before coming to record this podcast, and one thing that baffles Mike and Jay, the talking heads from the review, is often like, why did the boobs cry on a rose that's across the room?
Yes.
So the rose is on the other side of the room.
Yes.
She's standing on the other side.
Yeah.
She cries, and the tears fall on the rose on the other side of the room. And then in Change of Face, in one scene, the murderess has the cop at knife point. Well, she's from behind, and she has the knife up against his neck.
Yeah.
And then he fires his gun, but he fires his gun straight in front of him.
Straight forward. And it's just a shot of his hand. You don't see her or anything. You just see his hand firing.
No one's
forwards.
perspective has changed, so it looks like he's firing straight ahead.
Yes.
Now, in both these cases, that's the perspective of a panel insert inside in a larger comic panel. So on the page, you can see Dajette's eye boobs crying, and then we have an inset panel where it's falling on the spider or a cutaway. Yeah. And that makes sense in a comic because you don't have to worry too much about perspective from panel to panel, right? But when you make a transition from shot to shot, perspective is important. And they're saying, like, what is happening? How is he shooting her when she's behind him?
Yeah.
And how did that teardrop get to the other side of the room?
I think you're right, but the thing is, I think what baffles me about it is that he shot this movie. So normally with a storyboard, you hand it off to the director or cinematographer, the DOP, and they're going to film what's on the storyboard.
Yeah.
In this case, it's the same guy who has the comic. There's no reason for him to use it as a storyboard. He's in the room filming it, and he's like, wait a second, this doesn't cut together correctly. Now, and the other thing is there's lots of shots in the movie. It's not just that. Oftentimes people are in one take, they're in different places, and the next take, the person's holding her he's holding her and he was in a different side of the room or whatever. And it's just shot to shot. Or like when in Change of Face, when Mystery Girl cuts off that girl's face, she goes down to cut off her face. The next shot is her holding the face in her hands. She's not even lifting the face up into camera. It's as if it's a comic panel and she's already holding it.
Yes. I think I wouldn't be surprised, Kumar, if he had the comic open on his lap.
Yeah.
When he was shooting this. Yes, there are lots of technical problems with the film. Like, he constantly holds shots too long. I saw a theory online that it might be so that his soundtrack has enough time to play out in a given take.
That was certainly true in the strip club scenes because it seemed like they were playing the whole songs.
Yeah. But then there is I feel like there's definite causal relationship from comic panel to shot, because there are things like, well, to go back to Red Letter Media again, at one point when Dajette goes in to drink her coffee,
yeah,
the guys say there's already a coffee on the table.
Yes.
Like she sits down and the coffee's already there.
Yes.
And then the ridiculous French accent waiter comes up and says,
with neck tattoos,
"Can I get you a refill?"
Another refill. She's already had one. So she's sitting down for the first time. The cup's already there, and he says, "Do you want another refill?"
Yeah, and that's exactly the way it is in the comic. She's already seated at the table with the coffee cup on the table in the exact same position, except for whatever reason, Danzig didn't want to have her already sitting down. He wanted to show her walking in and then sitting down at the table, but the coffee cup has to already be there because that's the way it is in the comics panel. I bet dollars to donuts that he's using his comics as a storyboard for his film.
Yeah, you know what's baffling but he doesn't have to because he's the one holding the camera.
Exactly, he doesn't have to, but he's a hack, Kumar. He's a hack.
He's a hack. But the thing is, like that shot where the guy's shooting forward, again, in the movie, you just see his hand shooting forwards, just like in the comic. It's exactly the same. What's baffling to me is, and it goes for both the comics and the movies, this was a guy who had great taste in comic art and hired awesome artists to draw these comics. And this is a guy who also loves horror movies, like Rob Zombie, has a love of horror movies, and also has been in a lot of music videos directed by professional directors who would have spent a lot of time. He would have known, okay, you need 3 hours to set up your cameras and your lighting and your sound, and we're going to film for 8 hours to get 3 minutes of footage for your music video. He should have, like, that was... You'd think he would have a sense of what it's like to be a director on a set, because he's done it. He's been there on sets with professional directors. Well, but it's like all of that, everything he knows about comics went out the window when he started writing them, and everything he knows about movies was just went out the window. There's so many shots of people just looking at each other after they've delivered their lines. Never mind that cut. They're just waiting for him to yell cut. They're just staring, especially in the third section, the Drukiha section. That actress is really stuck just looking at herself in a mirror or bathing in blood and just
like
doing
5 minutes where she looks at herself in a mirror.
Going back and forth, like trying to figure out, what am I supposed to do now? Oh, I'll do this thing again, go back to that thing again. I'll lick it off my hands again. I'll look at her again. I'll do it again over and over. It's madness. It's utter madness.
Yeah. It's terrible.
Okay, let's talk about Change of Face.
I guess you can be in any number of music videos and watch any number of horror movies, but if it just doesn't sink in, you think you know better. I think he thinks he knows better, right? The guy has no self-awareness.
Yeah.
He has a completely overinflated opinion of himself, clearly. And I guess, and he shot it all himself. I mean, some of the effects look good. I mean, he got people that could do half-decent effects.
They looked like 90s like video game effects, actually, like the opening credits and the spider.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think that
the computer effects. Oh yeah, they were really bad.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the costumes and some of the props were all right. Like, he clearly spent money on them. Like, there were professionals somewhere involved in this production, but they weren't doing the editing because he was clearly doing that, and they weren't doing the shooting because he was clearly doing that, and they weren't doing the writing because he was clearly doing that, and they weren't doing the acting because nobody could act. I don't know where these people came from, but he didn't spend any money on actors. That's for sure.
They're all clearly strippers and porn stars, including the men. I'm sure they all were, because they all,
including the men.
they really were not. They didn't know how to deliver. Like, the lines were bad enough as they were, but then they couldn't deliver those lines. Like,
well, should we talk about how like everyone has a French accent in a terrible
really bad
French accent.
Yeah, the
in
worst.
The Albino Spider of Dajette vignette.
Yeah,
and not one of them can do convincing. On the television.
Yeah, it's the same as what's in the comic.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's talk about the change of face comic, because we haven't.
All right, let's go back to the comic.
We've kind of talked about a little bit about how the
well, one of those very first panels, the face mystery girl, who's the name of the antagonist, I suppose, not that there's a protagonist, but the villainous character who takes women's faces. You notice that she's standing in an unusual pose in that first panel.
Mm-hmm.
It's just sort of like her knees are sort of knock-kneed.
Mm-hmm.
Not, yeah. Knees close together, legs splayed out, feet splayed out.
Right.
And I guess that looks kind of okay in a comic, but then that's the exact shot that begins in the film.
Right.
She's standing absurdly.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of bow-legged.
Yeah. Yeah.
It looks very silly. More evidence, I'd argue, that he's trying to deliberately shoot scenes from the comic. Or not scenes, but actual images from the comic.
So, okay, the first chapter is about 6 pages, including spelling mistakes.
Oh, yeah.
And changes of tense. Sometimes it's present tense, sometimes it's past.
Hokey lines. In the distance, scraping footsteps mingle with the silent hell. What?
Yeah. Yep. So it's basically this woman she's a stripper, and she wears a mask on stage and mostly covers herself. She wears like a mask, like a COVID mask on stage. But
we know it's not a reveal though, Kumar, because she's introduced cutting someone's face off.
That's right. She cuts off someone's face, and then we see her on stage after that, and then we see in her room she's got faces of lots of people all over the walls, so we know that she's a serial killer. So and then the caption at the end of the first chapter is "Never the End," which suggests that there's going to be more stories of her, which there are. But okay, so my question why is she wearing the mask on? So she wears the faces of these women that she cuts off.
Yeah. And
in the comic, actually, the artist has failed to draw why. Until like the final chapter, we see that her face is disfigured, but I don't think we see that her face is disfigured in the early chapters. She's just wearing other women's faces for no good reason.
Right.
And so she's wearing these faces, but then she's wearing a mask on top of that, and I'm not sure why she would wear. If she's got the face on there, why does she need the mask?
I don't know. But that's the answer I'm going to give to a lot of these questions.
Okay, it's not as bad as the eyeball nipples, for sure. But anyway, so then we get, so now I could only find a few issues of this, so I don't have part 2. But I've got part 3, in which another woman has been murdered. We should mention, too, that at this stage, the way Danzig's writing has changed is, at least for this story, he's only doing 2 panels a page, if that. So it's really very broad, and there's a description of, and this is part of the thing, too, is you can have somebody standing on one side of the room and then in one panel, and in panel 2, you can say the albino spider leaps across the room and grabs her throat, and then have that in the drawing, and that's fine. And in the movie, you've got the next shot of him holding her throat, and there's no narration that tells you he's leapt across the room. It's just a bizarre jump cut. It's a jump cut that doesn't make sense. Anyway, so
because it makes sense, as you say, it makes sense in a comic, but it doesn't make sense in a film.
So we've got 2 or 3 panels. Anyway, so in issue 4 of Morella Presents, we get part 3 of the story, in which somebody else has been killed, and a cop at the crime scene finds a business card that's been dropped there by mystery. Okay, so
This is
this is
the
such a great
smoking gun.
this is such a great piece of evidence. So first of all, so they find another dead woman whose face has been cut off. Apparently, this is the 13th. I can't remember if that detail was in the movie or in the comic, but it's the 13th.
Everything
And
in
they're like,
the dialogue, Kumar, is straight from the comic.
it's exactly the same, right? But she's like, one of the cops, the chief of police is there or someone here. I don't know if he's a commissioner or what. He's like, 13 dead bodies, and the cops like, yeah, wait till the media gets a hold of it. I'm like, the media hasn't found out after 12 or 11 or 6, 13. They're worried about the media. Anyway, dead girl in the apartment with her face cut off. There's another detective there, and there's a business card on the floor next to the head detective's shoe. And she sees it, and she bends over and picks it up, and she says, look at this. It's a business card for a stripper or a titty bar.
Featuring Mystery Girl.
Featuring Mystery Girl. So I didn't read the previous issue, but in the movie anyway, you don't see her drop the card or why she would have dropped the card.
Oh,
so
right.
My question is, why is the card there? Why does the cop then assume that, no, he assumes that Mystery Girl is the killer? Why? So if there had been a fridge repair business card, would they assume that the fridge repairman was the killer?
Yeah.
Why didn't he see the thing that was next to his shoe?
Yeah.
They've been searching the scene because actually they're searching the scene. Then we cut away to Mystery Girl, to one of her scenes talking to her mask. Then we cut back to scene. So it seems like they've been there for hours. And he hasn't seen this business card that's sitting next to his shoe. I just was like...
Yeah, it does. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, well, also...
What can you say? Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, I don't think she picks it up from his next to his shoe in the comic. I think she just picks it up from somewhere in the apartment and is like, hey, look.
Right, so we don't have that scene in the comic.
And there's also, you know what? Another crazy thing in the comic is she hands him the business card, and there's a narrative caption which says the detective hands the card to her superior.
Yes.
I'm like, the drawing is showing that. Why are you telling us this?
It's the same on the next page. Sergeant Anders stands silently in the shadows of a dark alleyway, and he's literally doing that.
Makes me suspect it was a movie script that got made into a comic.
Oh, I see. So now you have evidence of it going the opposite direction.
That's what I'm kind of suspicious about, because at the end of the last issue, we get the advertisement for the movie deal, as if...
Oh, interesting.
You know, I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, that's possible.
Okay.
I'm willing to...
I don't know. I really don't know.
It can be both. It can be both. Because
sure.
This was definitely... I mean, it can go both ways. They could have done the comic from a script and then used the comic as the storyboards for the film.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like that, you know, cynical thing I was talking about, where that's the way they sell these scripts to Hollywood people.
Absolutely possible. Especially, obviously, for Changing Face, not for Albino Spider, because that was 10 years earlier. Oh, no, almost 20
years earlier, yeah. 97, so it was like 25 years earlier even. God, it's amazing to think Danzig's been doing it that long and still...
and no one's told him to stop.
No, he hasn't stopped. His skills haven't improved, you know, or... You think you get better at something.
Even by accident. Doesn't seem to happen.
Yeah, so, okay, so, all right, so we haven't read Jakia, so we can just move on to the movie.
Yes.
It's got 2 skulls on Shudder out of 5.
It's 2 skulls too many.
It is really too many. It really looks like it was shot on high-def video. It really looks like it should be on Pornhub. I was surprised it was on Shudder. It's so low budget. It was, all the sets are just like, it looks like they had one studio and they just built cardboard sets, and you can see it sometimes. There's a rock alleyway that looks like straight out of Star Trek: The Original Series. The spider's arms.
Dajette's apartment, you know, it has like cardboard ceiling occasionally. Yeah. You can see up, and it's just cardboard.
Yeah. The spider's arms don't move, which really reminded me of Ed Wood's The Octopus in Bride of the Monster, which didn't work. So Bela Lugosi had to grab the arms of the octopus and wrap it around himself as if he was being attacked.
Yes.
There are whole but I will say there are dimensions that are added to it by making it into a movie. Like when Dajette is sexually assaulted in the cinema, she walks out of there very slowly. But you don't get in the comic. But she's like, oh, I'll just stroll out of here casually. She's like, oh, why are you guys attacking me? Why are you attacking me? And then she like, man, she just moseys on out of there.
And they just watch her leave, and one guy goes, hey, you, come back.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's weird stuff in there, like
straight from the comic again.
Straight from the comic, but there's a moment where two guys are in there together, and one guy says to the other, says to the other guy, this is the part where she does both of them. As if this guy's seen this movie before and is telling his friend about this porno that they're watching. Like, watch this awesome part.
Yeah, he brought his friend.
Just so weird. There's the photo shoot, the whole model photo shoot is also very weird because, again, like people two of the girls leave the shoot after, because Dajette's having an emotional meltdown. Two of the girls, the photographer calls it off. First, the photographer's like, oh, Dajette, why don't you get in here? As if like he didn't notice she was, everything is just baffling. It's hard for me to describe. Two of the girls leave. The other two girls are just standing there posing still, even though there's no photo shoot happening.
Yep,
I'm like,
just posing. What? They don't know what to do. Danzig hasn't given them any direction, and he hasn't said cut. So
yeah.
They're just posing.
Yeah. Okay.
In fetish gear.
Yes, in fetish gear.
Is this the point where I say that this film is really, really sleazy?
There was, you know what, the best description, this is from Matt Lynch of Scarecrow Video. He says, Verotika is a collection of stuff that pings Danzig's adolescent boner radar.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, is there more?
No, that's the best. I can't top that. That's the best.
Well, you sent me an article, a brief history of the content in a traditional Glenn Danzig comic by Simon Abrams, and I wrote down that the Simon Abrams uses a series of adjectives to describe the film and Danzig.
Yep.
Yeah, adjectives and nouns. Juvenile.
Yep.
Adolescent.
Yep.
Sleazy.
Yep.
Petulant. Supposedly obscene.
Yep.
Desperate to displease.
Yep.
Edgelord entertainment.
Yep.
And sheer brazen narcissism.
Yep. The one I liked was EC Mutes Hustler.
But that sounds cool. But this isn't cool.
No, it's full of.
He also describes Danzig as having an overweening ego, chest-thumping misogyny, and technical inexpertise at anything.
Yeah. There's a scene when they, like in the strip club at the end she, the mystery girl runs away. She beats the cop and runs away, and then we get a cut to 6 months later. She's dancing at a different club.
Yeah. She has bullet holes in her.
She has bullet wounds. Yeah. Scars.
Scars. Yeah.
And there are sheets over the walls, as if to indicate that this in the movie, as if to indicate this is a different place. And that's very, very much reminded me of Plan 9 from Outer Space, where Ed Wood used that same tablecloth for like various things in the movie.
Here's the thing, like, yes, and it's this sleaze, and it's the desperation to appear edgy, and transgressive that makes this film dumb.
Yeah.
Really dumb.
Yeah.
And not as much fun as it should be. You know, watching Plan 9 from Outer Space is fun. You know, watching The Room is and look, take a Rob Zombie film, okay? So comparison here with Rob Zombie. So the Red Letter Media review, Jay said, Glenn Danzig saw the films that Rob Zombie was doing and thought, I could do that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But much, much, much worse. And the thing is, Rob Zombie doesn't take himself too seriously, I think.
I agree. 100%.
Like his films are not going to win awards, but you can see that he's doing it because he loves the genre.
He loves horror.
He loves horror movies. He loves his wife.
Yeah. And he's a guy that loves comics too. Really loves comics.
And that love comes through Like you can see that he's enjoying it and doing something he enjoys. Danzig is pretentious and vanishing up himself. Like he's trying so hard to be edgy and to do something. Something like I'm gonna get trans. He thinks he's making subversive art. But
yes, that's right. That's correct.
Rob Zombie is not trying to make subversive art. He's just trying to make entertainment. Danzig thinks he's making some kind of revolutionary statement with filth, and it's not, and it does not work because only an adolescent would think this kind of thing is edgy or significant.
I agree with all that, but I think it's not cynical.
No, I don't think it's cynical either. It's sincere it's sincere, but it's pretentious.
I think yes, but I think there is some fun to be had on the level of the Neil Breen movies and the Room, because there's so many flubbed lines and camera corrections mid take are the most. And especially in the Rukia one, they like the old faithful level geysers of blood, just ordinary people. Cut their throat and it just sprays out for minutes of blood spraying out.
You're right. I was chuckling. I was laughing all the way through. I mean, quite often, especially in Contessa, I was just grimacing, looking away and bored. But the performances are so hilarious. The French accents are so silly and just so wrong. Like that you couldn't get. They're the worst French accents you've ever heard.
Yeah.
These people can't, as you say, like they're like he just went down the strip club and said, "Hey, he wants to earn $20," and put him in his van and took him back to the set.
$20. You have to sing it like Elvis. Who wants $20? Oh yeah.
I don't know why Glenn Danzig sounds kind of like Rocky in my head, but I actually watched an interview with him and he has quite a high pitched voice actually. But he's just rounded up these porn stars and strippers and given them their lines, and they're just like, "My face? No, not my face."
That's an excellent line reading. Also, why does Mystery Girl say you'll get it back when I'm done with it? She's never given a face back. Why does she say that?
She puts them up on the wall. That's right, because it sounds cool, Kumar. You're not going to give it to me, then I'm just going to have to take it.
Yeah.
How do you give someone your face? You can't. Yeah. It's just like it's like in Snowpiercer.
Yes.
When he gave him his arm. You can't give someone your arm. You can't give someone your face.
Yeah. Okay, I want to make a couple more points about Dajette. My favorite
trademark, by the way, I noticed when I was when I read the comic.
One thing my favorite bit in this was when the cops show up when she's taking the pills in the movie version, they've got this battering ram, and it's another amazing thing where the actors can't do what's in the comic panel. Because the guy's hitting it, but he's just tapping the door with his battering ram in a very gentle dance-like motion.
Yep.
Then we get a cut to the other side of the door from the inside of the room, and a huge hole smashes in it. Somehow that causes the door to open. Why? Why does that happen? Then
and you can see where they've scored the wood as well.
Yes.
For it to break.
And then inside the room, the monster so Dajette has died, and the monster's looming over her. And the cops come in and say, "Take your hands off her neck."
He'd already dropped her.
He's not holding her neck.
Yeah.
And it's like they just read the line, and nobody asked Danzig, "Should we change the line?"
No, they just wanted to get paid. They just wanted to get paid, and before they had to go back to the strip club, right?
Yeah.
You're right. Because it's just straight from the comic. I don't think there's any dialogue in either Change of Face or Albino Spider of Dajette that's not straight from a word balloon.
I think he opened his Word file and he copy pasted it into Script Pro or Final Draft Pro.
I reckon he gave them the comic.
That too. Yeah.
I reckon he made them buy it. Come on.
Yeah.
Imagine just reading it. That was how they prepared.
By the way, I want to say that these comics are very hard to find. and you mostly have to order them direct through his website. I don't know. But he's still making them, and he's still publishing probably very small print runs of a few hundred or 1,000. He's still like, I want to do this thing. I want to put out these comics, and he's still doing it to this day, 25 years later. And I don't think you can order them through normal comic shops anymore. I think you have to get them direct. Anyway,
like speaking of, in Change of Phase, when Mystery Girl kills the second girl, she accesses her apartment with a key card. Right? She just buzzes herself into the apartment, and then the actress goes, "Who is it? I'm in here. I didn't call maintenance today."
And then it cuts, and she's standing in front of her.
Yeah.
As if she's been speaking to her the whole time, instead of her being in another room.
How did she get in? How did she get the key to this random?
Where did the key card come from?
Yep. How did she get in? Why didn't she run? Why don't these women fight back? Because
she's still alive. Because afterwards, she's standing up and she's just like mumbling about how her face is gone.
Her face is gone.
Okay, and then we get to Drakiha, which is seems to be based on Countess Bathory.
I don't know. It's Countess Bathory of Hungary, who famously bathed in the blood of virgins.
I don't even know. Allegedly. I think it sounds to me like one of those Catherine the Great stories that were just told by her detractors to.
That's the thought. That's the way
defame her.
I did a little research, and that seems to be the consensus now, that it was a stitch up because if she was quite rich.
Right. Well, there you go. So this is the longest. It's probably 35 minutes.
Well, it certainly feels the longest.
It feels and is the longest. So it's about this woman who bathes in the blood of virgins to stay young and beautiful. So first she buys this one actually has some outdoor shots. So you're not looking at the cardboard sets anymore.
Yeah.
And some real horses.
Rented some horses, and he wants you to know it because we get some long shots.
So first she buys a peasant girl. And then she brings her back to her castle, and she's got a line of peasant girls. And one of them, she slits her wrists and ties her up in this bath. And then she bathes in the bath.
Yep.
And she bathes in there for a very long time.
Yep.
And then her assistant, Sasha or whatever, brings in another girl and then slits her throat in front of her in the bath. I'm not sure why there's different systems in place. Like one
is strung up and has a
wrist
slit, and the other one you just bring her in, and I think some of it doesn't even go in the bath because it sort of sprays directly onto her, doesn't it?
Yeah, it just sprays in her face, and then she's got another girl hung upside down later, and she slits her throat and then kind of bathes in her blood. Then she stares in a mirror for a long time at how beautiful she is,
possibly 3 months.
Then she goes for a long ride through the woods and talks to a wolf. And says, "Bring me another girl," and somehow the wolf brings her another. It's actually her soldiers bring the girl, but the wolf has found this girl. I don't know why. Sometimes she buys them, and sometimes. Anyway,
sometimes she sees them. One runs away, and
then she eats her heart. One runs away. They cut off her head,
and it just goes on the ground. I thought we were supposed to be saving the blood, but it just spills onto the ground.
And then she goes and she has a room full of their heads.
Yeah.
And some of them have been there for a long time, and then she sits down, and that's the climax. Is her sitting down.
Happens. No, I mean that's it. There's no story. There's no characters. It's just those 4 or 5 sequences where she kills some girls and bathes in their blood, and she has 1 or 2 lines where she says, "You've got nice skin," or "This one," or "It keeps me young."
I actually wonder if Danzig was like, okay, 90 minutes, and he wrote down every shot, and it was like, this shot needs to be 1 minute, this shot needs to be 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and then he filmed those shots to be that long. The mirror scene is baffling. It is baffling how long she looks at herself. And then she looks at herself up close, and she backs up, and then she looks at her close and backs up. It's just over and over this cycle. It goes on.
Like it goes for about 3 months.
Yeah. Really.
And I think maybe, as I said, I read somewhere that he might have been matching the length of scenes to the music because he also wrote the score.
Yes. Instead
of the other way around, which is the way you're supposed to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's crazy. It makes Birdemic look like the birds. It's so
Damn, that's great.
it's so unbelievable, and it's not even usually. Sometimes a joke you make when you watch a really bad movie was at least it was in focus. It's not in focus. A lot of it's blurry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's technically really like sloppy. Scenes go too long. People aren't in focus, or people aren't in frame. It's shot properly.
Oh yeah, and the camera's moving around, not sure where it's supposed to be.
There's lens flare some of the time.
Yeah.
You can remove that with a computer. There's
Yeah.
lens flare.
Maybe he was going for a J.J. Abrams thing. It's boy oh boy. I really, you could talk about it all day. It's so inept in every way. And even on the, the concept of it is so inept. And I kind of understand that. I can kind of see that he was like, oh, I've got an amazing image in mind, like this person sitting on this throne surrounded by heads on the wall or something. And he's tried to fashion
That bath prop was pretty cool, but then it was someone else that did that, right?
Right.
Yeah. You're right. He has sometimes maybe he wants it to look like something, usually something from the comic. But there's
a decapitated head that's maybe an animatronic.
Yeah, it looks quite good.
Yeah.
And the beating heart.
Yes, the beating heart.
Right.
Yeah.
So some competent people swallowed their pride and worked on this film.
Yeah.
And
why is that girl alive after she pulls her heart out? That's a normal human peasant girl. Why?
Yeah, exactly. Why? No reason. Maybe the actor didn't know how to play dead. Quite often the corpses are breathing when they've had their faces, but that's because they just couldn't stay still.
Yes.
Tweaking.
Yes, but this girl that they pulled out her heart was alive. The heart was still beating.
Yes.
And the girl was still alive, and that was not why. Okay, let's wrap it up. Okay, comic.
All right. All right.
Yeah or nay?
Yeah, that's nay. Please
nay.
Do your eyes a favor and never read this comic.
I'm going to say nay, but I want to say, just you can Google the covers and look at some of those Frazetta covers and stuff, and some of those Bisley covers. And that's about it, I guess. Like I said, I've always wanted to like them. I have trouble parting with them because I'm like, I know I'm never going to be able to find them again. And I think, then I flip through them every time. I'm like, I can't believe how bad this is. But anyway, there you go. Nay. Okay, movie, yay or nay? Now, this is a key question because I would recommend people watch The Room and Plan 9 and Fateful Findings and all those really awful movies. So,
yeah, look, nay. It's nay for me. Look, you will laugh. You'll laugh if you watch it. You'll laugh at the hilariously inept performances. You'll laugh when Albino Spider drops Dajette and you can see sort of like his bum hanging out of his costume.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of a grimy experience, especially as it starts to drag towards the end. I mean, Danzig is a pervert.
Yeah.
This is like there are, in case it's not clear, there is a lot of nudity in this movie, a lot of gratuitous nudity.
Yeah. Yeah, the stripping scenes go on forever.
Yeah.
And
if you've ever wanted to see the inside of a depressing strip club, watch this movie.
Made out of
and you're not willing to go in one yourself, watch this movie and you'll get the real sense of kind of sleaze and depression as how it must feel to actually be inside a kind of a cheap strip club with a washed up punk artist from the late 70s. But if you have self-respect, go and watch The Room instead. That's a nay from me, Kumar.
Yeah, I agree. I think there is something that he doesn't realize that's really gross about the objectification of it. And The Room is a great comparison because there's the sex scene. There's two sex scenes in The Room, and Tommy Wiseau uses the same footage for both scenes. He literally shows the same scene twice at different points in the movie, and there's this shot that seems to be straight up his own butt. Like it's right up his butthole, and it's like, wow, this is a choice.
Hilarious.
And there seems to be a scene here in this movie. I wasn't quite sure, but it looked like he used the same footage of Mystery Girl stripping twice, and I'm not quite sure if that's the case or not. But
I can't imagine. He must have hours of footage of strippers from this, so I can't imagine why he would use the same footage twice.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe it was the way she flipped her cape around. It looked very similar to me both times.
I know.
Maybe she just danced that same way twice. I don't know.
Yeah,
but
I know what you're saying. She sort of ruffles it about herself, which
yeah.
Yeah.
This is a nay. I think there's better bad movies, but I'm baffled by it. I am kind of curious to see what that vampire western one is.
If it's not based on a comic, Kumar, I'm sure I'll never watch it.
But
if it is, I expect to watch it with you at some point in the near future.
Yeah, I don't think it is. But I'll double
lucky
check on
me.
that.
I'm reprieved.
Okay, adaptation, yay or nay? I'm gonna go first and say this is the biggest yay yet.
Yes.
This is the most perfect. It even captures the incompetence of the comics, and the poor art style of the comics is translated into the poor high definition video somehow blurry footage of this movie. It is so exact and perfect an adaptation. I couldn't imagine a better one. All the dialogue is word for word on screen. There's not a single panel that's missing in the movie. It's astonishing on that level.
Yep, I have nothing to add. I agree completely.
Next week, I did have another thing in mind. It doesn't. None of that matters. We're going to talk about Return of Swamp Thing. I don't even have the year off the top of my head. I can tell you the name of the director off my head. I think Dirk DeRock, who played Swamp Thing in the first movie and the TV series, is in this movie as well.
And Heather Locklear.
And Heather Locklear as Abby Arcane. Oh my
Amazing.
God.
I can't wait.
Yeah, wild movie. And look forward to it.